I genuinely think that they were the happiest people I've ever met in my life.
Because they're in a cult.
Welcome to Decoding TV's coverage of Euphoria Season 3's premiere. I'm David Chen here with Patrick Klepek. Before we even talk about Euphoria Season 3, there's already been controversy that has erupted online over the course of the last few days. I'm going to read a headline here from The Hollywood Reporter. Labrinth says why his music won't be in Euphoria Season 3. I don't let people treat me like... The singer-songwriter scored the music for the HBO's show's first two seasons. His track, All For Us, a collaboration with the series star Zendaya, won him an Emmy Award in 2020. End quote. So, we should say, before I even read the article, Labrinth wrote the music for Euphoria Season 1, which was incredible. Like, just was as important as the visual language of the show in defining the aesthetic of Euphoria, right? Just like... music that was not only fit in beautifully with the show itself, but transcended the show and became a hit separate from the show. So it's just like an amazing piece of work. Patrick, it sounds like you agree, yeah?
Yeah, I think it's sort of, you can't really separate, or feels like in many ways you can't separate the two.
Even if you consider it as part of an overall aesthetic, but it felt like, given how much, when we talked about, on a recent podcast, the first two seasons of Euphoria, which I caught up on in advance of this, that is like a huge part of the appeal, especially when different times where the storytelling kind of goes careening in different directions. Like at the end of the day, like how it looks and how it sounds was a huge force and almost a force multiplier in making Euphoria, I think, the force that it was. Absolutely. So I think some people were wondering how much of Labrinth's music is going to be in season 3 of the show. And reading here from the Hollywood Reporter, on Saturday, Labrinth took to his Instagram story to share additional comments about the series, seemingly in response to creator Sam Levinson's recent interview with Rolling Stone, in which Sam Levinson called Labrinth an incredible creator and said, I don't know why he left after working on the show's first two seasons. So then Labrinth had this to say in his Instagram story: people will comfortably lie in this industry and still call themselves honest people. So no cap, I decided to remove whatever music I had in it. I spoke to HBO. As far as I know, we are cool. I left because, last truth, when I work for someone, their vision is paramount to me, but I don't let people treat me like... End quote. So not the headline you want in your opening weekend of the show coming out on HBO. But it is the headline that we have. Obviously there's been many controversies around Sam Levinson and his work with actors and actresses behind the scenes on multiple shows. And this is adding more fuel to the fire, it seems. So just wanted to let people know about that. I don't have that much to say about it other than it's just... It feels like a story you do not want out there on the day that you're like, we literally years have been building up to this moment. And then like right at the finish line, this Labrinth story breaks very bad. Patrick,
I feel like HBO this is why I was so confident this show was going to happen, as you poo-pooed the notion that Euphoria season 3 was going to happen. And this was before I even watched the show. Like,
right.
I think the drama is part of the appeal. I think the chaos is part of the appeal. Now, you don't want, if actors are uncomfortable on set, or you don't want to court that sort of, but I don't know. The messiness appears to be, I think, part of doing business with Sam Levinson. And I think, I think, yes, but I guess ideally you'd rather have Labrinth's music in the show enhancing the product. But I think
Labrinth's genre-defining music that has won awards, you would rather have that in the show? I agree. Yes.
I'm just saying, you think they looked at the scripts for this show and then went you know what? I'm just saying this was a train that was moving forward, and a headline is a headline. Interest is interest. People watching is people watching. I think we're using a different calculus right now for Euphoria, in which... I mean, why is HBO cool? Because HBO was cool with either outcome.
I don't know that they're celebrating this, Patrick, but I would. Here's where I will agree with you is I think that the drama is a big part of the reason why this is transfixing to America. The show is transfixing to America is because it is messy and it is shocking, and people are drawn to that kind of thing. So let's talk about how well this season harnesses that.
So Euphoria season 3, episode 1 on delay, which is a line that Rue says early on in the episode. Now, Patrick, I had heard pretty negative things about this show leading up to the premiere. According to the Rotten Tomatoes critic consensus, quote, Euphoria returns with less than the sum of its parts in a disjointed cavalcade of forced narratives that leave its talented cast stranded in the wind, end quote. Roxana Haddadi, extremely talented writer at Vulture.com and previous Decoding TV co-host, wrote, Euphoria is a monument to Sam Levinson's lack of creativity, over at the Vulture.com. That was a headline. So pretty brutal critical consensus around the show. I was expecting the worst, especially me, David Chen. I was someone that really did not enjoy season 2. So I was like, could it be worse than season 2? You know, could it be as plotting and pretentious and glacially paced and up its own ass as season 2? That's the question I went into season 3 asking. So Patrick Klepek, let me ask you, what did you think of the Euphoria season 3 premiere?
There is strong Ryan Murphy energy coursing through the veins of Euphoria season 3, and I mean that in the most insulting way possible.
How would you define Ryan Murphy energy, Patrick Klepek?
That's a great question. Because I got off of the Ryan Murphy train so quickly after, I think I really enjoyed the first season of American Horror Story. Tried to get through the second season because there were some alien abductions happening in like a hospital, I think was part of the season 2 storyline. And at a certain point it was cast, like a lot of how I view Murphy's work is casting broadly like incredible ensembles of actors to give them just the sloppiest material possible. And relying almost entirely on look and aesthetic and the sheer talent of the actors involved to propel your eyes onto the screen.
Mm-hmm. So Ryan Murphy is almost like a lack of things than it is the presence of something.
It's like we got a bunch of people together to waste their potential and like you, the audience members, time. And much like Sam Levinson, like Ryan Murphy has moments of like when the chaos comes together, it can produce something pretty interesting. It's not as though Murphy hasn't done anything worthy of note. It's just they are extremely prolific, and I find like very little of the output all that interesting. And that's sort of the vibe I was getting out of the first episode of Euphoria season 3. We've only seen the first episode alongside everybody else. It's a bunch of incredibly talented actors, although like whether all of them are bringing their A game or are here for contractual reasons, I feel like it's something we can get into with some of the subplots. But if one thing that I'm going to try and view this through, and I was kind of going through over the course of watching the first episode, was that if I view this as Euphoria season 3, sort of like truest to what you would believe that to mean, I don't know how much of a good time I'm going to have watching Euphoria season 3. If I view it in a bit of a Murphy adjacent lens, which is, has this just become an anthology show that loosely like has some of the bits from Euphoria, right, shares characters, some relationships, but what if we plopped all that in a different setting? Maybe that I can find some entertainment value, because I think some actors are really bringing it, right? Like Zendaya is incredible, is doing, I think, absolutely mesmerizing work in this show, in which if I think about what's happening for more than 30 seconds, like reality begins to crumble. I don't know how any of these characters are ever going to interact because their stories don't seem to have any potential to overlap with one another. And even though Euphoria, as I discovered in watching it, was hardly a show about being in high school, the construct of high school gave reasons for interactions between the cast, even if they largely spent time apart, right? Like Lexi doesn't really spend a lot of time with the other characters, but like they're all in high school, they have friend overlap. Like there's a structure to it that feels connected. Like none of that exists so far in Euphoria season 3. So I found myself thrilled and entertained, but mostly because I felt like I was watching a different show. And maybe I can enjoy that on its own merits and its own terms by the end. But if I was looking for, I wonder what happened in season 3 of Euphoria. I really don't think this show is all that interested in pulling on those threads.
Yeah, I mean, I think the characters and Sam Levinson and the audience of Euphoria is finding out something that all of us found out after we left high school, which is once you leave high school, there's really not that much reason for you to spend time with all these people on a regular basis. All right, what do I think of Euphoria season 3 so far after watching the premiere episode? I would agree with you. My question is, does Zendaya's back hurt from carrying this show? Because she continues to be amazing.
Yeah.
And the acting level and quality and intensity is wildly divergent in the rest of the cast, I would say. Like, some people seem to be doing a solid job, other people, whatever. But really, I think you are right that this series bears very little resemblance to its first 2 seasons at all. I mean, here's what I will say in praise of Euphoria season 3. Sam Levinson knows how to take big swings. And this is a big swing. Like, this is he is well beyond the confines of high school. This is about America, the founding ideas of America. It's basically a Western, right, version of America, as far as we can tell so far. Who knows how that will change? And presumably, it's going to have some kind of commentary on Hollywood, on the sort of image obsession that people in Hollywood have, and those kinds of things, right? So how is that all going to connect? Maybe it won't. It probably is not going to in any way. But like, he's pointing his finger at the outfield and saying, like, I'm going to try to say some big important things this season, and we'll see if he succeeds. But largely, I agree with basically everything you said, which is, I mean, the characters so far bear very little resemblance to what we saw in season 2 of the show. And it could just be another it could be like an American Horror Story, like, where like it's a whole new story but with the same cast. That's basically what this is, right? That's basically what it is.
Suffering through drug addiction and a complicated relationship with her family, and like, what is it? How is she dealing with the loss of her father that was clearly like a pivotal moment that is real? You know what? We're going to just get Coleman Domingo in there for a couple of minutes, like have him in the cafe again, and let's just move. To
be honest, I'm actually glad that they're moving on from that, because that felt like they had gotten what they could out of that specific plot line.
It was, Rue was stuck in a rut from a character perspective, right, in terms of like having a new arc. But I
know what you're saying. Like, no mention of any of those people. I understand.
Yeah.
All right, Patrick, let's talk about what actually happened in the season 3 premiere of the show. And you know what? Let me also say this. Let me say this before we actually talk about the plot, which is, Euphoria has always been, in my opinion, one of the most ambitious shows on TV. And I think that continues to be true. Like, he's kind of creating new worlds and universes here, and at a production value level that very few other shows can match. And I got to appreciate that. And that's evident right from the opening scenes of the show. That's why I bring it up, right? So we begin the show 5 years after the events of Euphoria season 2. Rue's in the middle of the desert with some folks helping to get her car out of the mud. And then she makes it, and a ramp gets set up to help her over the border wall. But she gets stuck. Her car gets stuck. And I have to say, right from the jump, I have a lot of affection for this. This felt like a very Coen Brothers-esque sequence. It's well executed. You actually believe in the physical comedy of the scene.
Oh, yeah. And the way it's like, they're there. Like, I believe that she is on this apparatus, so that as the car begins to tilt and she's like kind of walking on the fence, very believable. She's also like I actually think this episode in particular, like, she has like a wonderful physical. Zendaya has like a really wonderful physical comedy to her that I haven't really. I don't know. I think it's very on display in this episode in particular, starting here, continuing through some events that occur over the course of the episode, in which like she just has a way of contorting her body that really enhances when she's trying to land something comedically that I did not give her full credit for until, like, it didn't really piece together to me until this episode in particular.
So she ends up in Agua Dulce, Texas, which I looked up on Google Maps, and it's I think a few hundred kilometers north of the U.S.-Mexico border. How she got that far on her own, who knows? But
who cares?
She convinces a Christian family to take her in under the guise that she's writing an article for her college newspaper about drugs in the United States. And she gets taken to a Greyhound, and then she rides the Greyhound to California. Flashback to a few years after high school, and we see Lori confront Rue 46 months after she gave her a suitcase full of $10,000 worth of drugs. Now, those who remember what happened in season 2 will recall that Lori had loaned Rue $10,000 worth of drugs, and that her mom and sister had gotten rid of the drugs. And so Rue was in a great deal of trouble. Fez is like under suspicion of having obviously being in the drug trade and also killing Mouse. And there is a sting operation where Fez and his brother are apprehended, or not his brother, I should say. Fez and Ashtray are apprehended. Ashtray is killed. Fez is taken to jail for what we learn in this episode is 30 years. And it turns out that Lori decided after all that, right, and after Lori herself was implicated in that sting, she decided to leave after to let things cool off a little bit. But she returns and confronts Rue 46 months after the fact and says that, hey, at a $10,000 loan with a 20% interest rate compounds to approximately $43 million. And I did the math on this, and that is actually correct. So if you have a 20% interest rate on $10,000, it will eventually get to $43 million within a few years. Just goes to show you the power of compounding interest. And this is why folks, you should invest sooner rather than later. You know, like start saving for retirement, because time is your biggest factor when it comes to saving for retirement.
Where can I get 20% of my money, David?
Yeah, I mean, you're going to be hard. You're going to be hard pressed to find a 20% monthly interest rate.
It's like, who are you talking to? Connect me. Like, where can I put my money?
But just look at how the S&P 500 compounds over time, and hopefully that's just going to continue forever with no interruptions. Anyway, this podcast does not constitute financial advice, by the way. Anyway, Lori is willing to let it go for $100,000, which I have to say was pretty nice of her. But that's how Rue becomes a drug mule. And then we see Rue learning to swallow balloons filled with cocaine. She brings Faye along with her. And then eventually Rue becomes the #1 drug mule. We get a harrowing glimpse into what it's like to be a drug mule. You got to swallow all these things. And the biggest risk is obviously that one of them is going to explode and you will die. So pretty upsetting. Have you seen the movie Maria Full of Grace, by the way, Patrick?
No. Familiar with it, but have not seen it personally.
Similar plot, much different style and tone than this film. But in that movie, somebody learns to be a drug mule. Anyway, there's a scene where Rue meets with Ali and talks about the possibility of getting religion.
They're super religious and just like so happy. And it just made me think that maybe I'm the one missing something.
This was a pretty cool moment, right? Coleman Domingo in the show, and obviously Patrick, your episode, the episode that Rue did with his character, was one of your favorite episodes of the whole series.
Yes, easily.
Yeah, and so it's nice to see them back together again. But then she does a drug delivery to a guy named Alamo Brown, where a pretty swank house party is taking place. Alamo owns a number of strip clubs in the area, and Rue offers to work for him. But before that can progress, one of the girls at the party dies because the drugs are laced with fentanyl. So the idea is that potentially Lori has sent fentanyl-laced drugs to sabotage Alamo, perhaps in some way. Rue pleads for her life, believing that she was placed in Alamo's life by God. And then Alamo tests that theory by shooting an apple off of Rue's head, William Tell style. And that's basically most of the stuff that happens with Rue. We'll cover the other side characters later. But yeah, Patrick, any comments on Rue's storyline so far?
I will say, like, when I was watching the end of season 2, it kept occurring to me, I guess it's fine. We're just going to forget about the fact that she owes $10,000 to Lori. I'm not, it's not a loose end I need tied up in the show,
Right,
but I got
right.
to the end like, okay, like Rue is a bad person. She's acting out. She's harming people in her life. She needs to treat them better. And I want her to get better. But her family dumping out all those drugs, like, if this was Breaking Bad, those people are dead. Like, someone's going to come and shoot them. I don't think this is what this show is, but I am worried for the life of Rue's mother and sister. So, like, this being how that is resolved is a little like, what? She just wakes up several years later, is like, time to go cash in this random high school drug addict that I had an interaction with. Seems a little implausible in terms of like Lori's like
things I should do today. It's like, oh, right, I had that in my notes app to like go check in on Rue after the last couple of years. So,
well, I think it's plausible that they wouldn't forget it. That's a pretty substantial debt, $10,000. It's not like, a dime bag or whatever. It's like, this is a substantial
4 years
debt.
later, track her down in the middle of a like part-time job. I'm just saying, as a threat calculus, it's fine. It's fine, and it's an arbitrary reason to like so that she can be like the through line to introduce a bunch of new characters into the show. Which, however silly as it all might seem plot-wise, there are a bunch of actors really going for it with some interesting personalities that I can't say whether it's good storytelling, but I was thoroughly entertained watching them like walk across my screen. Like it's hard to deny with the entertainment factor. I just don't know. And that's where I sort of feel like if Rue is going to be the through line through all of this, right? Like I feel like she is going to be center stage, the main character that we're following. And yes, she was the main character through much of Euphoria. I think that's even more so the case going to be this time. If it's not going to be, if I don't think the satire is going to land, I have no confidence the satire is going to land. But then I just want to have a good time. Rue's storyline does feel like the most potential for a good time. And of any actor in this cast, she seems to not be looking down on the words and like is happy to do whatever she can with them. So I do expect to be like, have a lot of fun with Rue and Zendaya over the course of this series as I like change my calculus on what this is, what I want from it, sort of in real time.
I would agree that, I mean, certainly in this episode, Rue's storyline gets the most time and attention. So who knows how that's going to play out. But so far, she continues to be an incredibly compelling screen presence. I mean, it's remarkable to watch Zendaya in shows like Euphoria and then see her in Dune and then see her in The Drama. And these are all vastly different performances. And Challengers. These are all vastly different performances. And I just think she's doing just such a wonderful job. So like, regardless of how good the show is, it's just going to be really compelling to watch Zendaya do her thing. Like she's always bringing 110% to the show. Anything else to say about this plotline? The only thing I wanted to mention is I got like some real Alfred Molina in Boogie Nights energy from the Alamo Brown character, at the end of this episode, and the idea that he's going to William Tell this apple off of her head, I just think is like, this is one thing you say about Euphoria is like, novel things are happening. So, I'm using sentences to describe things that have never occurred before on TV, and that's wonderful. So I can't complain. So when she gets the apple shot off her head and she kind of starts crying in joy and just like this realization that she's alive. Wonderful moment. Like even if the show turns out to be terrible, which it most likely will, it's like we got some really transcendent moments, and that's true of season 2 of Euphoria as well, right?
Yeah, Zendaya really sells the stakes of a sequence that does not really have many stakes. You know what I mean? Like sort of mean like emotionally for the character, like we're just rushed into like a high tension situation. It's not like an arc for the character that we built up. But like you said, like she sells the shit out of it. And it's just like, all right, well, I believe in the stakes of this moment, even if I don't think the show has done the work to get me there, like storytelling wise, but dang, like fine. Like if this is how it's going to be, then I at least think we're geared up for a roller coaster on this part of the plot. I am much more worried about other characters in this story, even just from an entertainment value standpoint. But with here, between Zendaya meeting the moment and just like she's willing to pick up the bat, you know what I mean? Like in the same way that Sam Levinson's taking a big swing, I don't know if it's gonna like land, but she's picking up the bat with him, and like they're both swinging away, and that is at least something to behold.
I want to also say that I do think there's the thesis of the show is in this plotline so far. I'm guessing. I haven't seen the rest of the episodes, but they talk about how in America, it's a place where you can always reinvent yourself. And I do think that is true in America. And it's mirrored in the fact that the show itself is being reinvented right now. Like this is a very different tone and style than season 2. And I do think that's one thing that you can say is good or bad about America, but I think it's pretty cool. Is that like America is one place where you can define who you want to be in a way that I think is pretty distinct in the world. And we will see how effectively this season carries on that idea.
Well, I don't want to say, I think the through line between many different plot threads on that idea is going to be, or it seems to be, what does it mean for young people to succeed in America these days? What are their paths to success, and how do we measure what it means to be successful? How much is it, truly being rich, or is it the image of being rich? Is it the image of being successful on social media platforms? And so there are some, I can see, even if can't imagine how the characters interact with each other, I can see some of the thematic overlaps if the broad idea is going to be for young people, what does it mean to succeed in America in 2026? Which is, there is plenty to pull on there.
The actor who plays Alamo Brown gave an interview to Decider, where he talks about what Alamo Brown represents in the show. He says, quote, "Alamo represents almost a rude awakening of sorts to these young, naive post-high schoolers who are trying to make their way into life. If you say you believe in God, let's see if he believes in you. He's that guy," end quote. So to what you're saying, it's like, he represents kind of reality colliding with the post-high school. When you leave high school, the world is at your feet. You have all these dreams. And then reality kind of steps in the way. And I guess he represents, I will say, a very extreme version of that. I'll just say a very extreme version of that.
He's such a good actor, too. He is imprinted in my mind for the brief arc he had in Lost. Go read. He was treated very poorly in that show and how he was written in and out of it. But I haven't seen him in many things since. And I had to sort of blink. I'm like, what do I know this guy from? I was like, Mr. Echo from Lost? That's him? I forgot how much I've missed this guy. He just has a wonderful playing someone as possibly distant personality-wise from Mr. Echo on Lost, but It was a delightful to have that realization while watching it.
Name of the actor, I may mess up the pronunciation, but I believe it's Adewale Akinnuoye Agbaje. That's the name of the actor. But he plays Alamo Brown on this season of Euphoria. All right, Patrick, it's time to talk about some of the other plot lines that happened this episode, such as they were. So Rue hangs out with Lexi, and we learn that Fez is in prison for 30 years, and Lexi doesn't have time to even call Fez because she's working in Hollywood on a nighttime soap. Her boss, Patty Lance, is an industry legend played by Sharon Stone. And that's basically all we get of that plotline this episode, as far as I can tell, right? Not that much. We also learned a little bit more about Maddie, who works in management. She represents influencers and actors, including Dylan Reed, who's played by Homer Gear, the heartthrob of a TV show called LA Nights. So I've assumption that these two storylines are going to intersect somehow in ways that we can't predict yet. But really, the most attention this episode goes to Cassie, who's played by Sydney Sweeney. Cassie is pretending to be a dog for the internet. She's engaged to Nate, who has taken over his dad's business, and he's trying to build a sort of assisted living facility called Sunsettlers that wants to be the premier end-of-life facility in California. But he's having a lot of trouble building in California because you got to get environmental studies and permits and everything, et cetera. I am curious, by the way, Patrick, how much this is actually going to be a metaphor for how hard it is to film in California, which is it's been notoriously difficult. That's why it's cut down on a lot of production in California. California is a place where you think of like, you can go there to build things and make things and make your fortune. But in reality, there is a lot of bureaucracy and taxes that make it difficult. And I do wonder what is going to be done with this plotline. But anyway, later, Cassie looks at Maddie's Instagram and gets jealous. But when she's dining with Nate and talking about their upcoming wedding, because they're now engaged, she says she wants $50,000 worth of flowers. He is not cool with that, but she then convinces him, hey, let's do it because I'm going to be able to make this money using OnlyFans. And he is kind of okay with it, although he doesn't want her face in the mix. So, yeah, Patrick, any thoughts on the Cassie Nate storyline? I mean, let's start with this question, which is one of the critiques I've seen is that this version of Nate bears very little resemblance with the version we saw last season, and I have to say I think that's pretty true. I mean, I understand high schoolers can change over time.
He was depicted as like a psychopath,
almost psychopathic.
In our previous podcast, I said he was akin to a Jason Voorhees. Like this is a
wow.
Because you always had this presence of like being just out of frame, sort of stalking the other characters, showing up at inopportune times to sort of level some of the most menacing. I mean, like I didn't care for the family dynamic like subplot that like none of that did a whole lot for me in Euphoria season 2, where it was like a real central part of that season. But I thought he gave like for what the material was asking, like an incredible performance. Like he uses his physicality and stature. Like, of course he was picked to be something like Frankenstein. Like you see so much of that in his portrayal of Nate. Either that is, if you want to give the show a little grace, this is something that like is a bit of a hoodwink, right? Like the reason this character is different will make more sense as we go along, or it's something he's suppressing as part of sort of a professionalization as he like took over the family business, and that actually like the Nate that we came to know over those first 2 seasons will emerge in a different way. But right now it really feels like, well, if you want to be really cynical, it's like, well, this actual actor doesn't want to play a character like that anymore, so we're just going to write a completely new character here. And so we'll see where that plays out. I feel like we don't have enough information, but I agree with the critique and the frustration that that doesn't line up. Even as I tired of that character sort of by the end, and it sort of made Nate mostly into a plot device to like show up and foil everyone else's plans and just be the embodiment of evil in this high school. Separately, I think I made the point in our discussion on season 1 and 2 that I think...
Right, which, by the way, is available for paid subscribers at decodingtv.com. Check out that bonus episode that Patrick Klepek and I did about Euphoria season 1 and 2. Anyway, continue.
One point that I made was I think Sydney Sweeney is an actor... I don't think I put it this way in the podcast, but I think she can live up or down to the material that she is given. And I think when she is given good material, I think she can absolutely be like a really meaningful actor. And then she can also play down to the material if it is beneath her. And what's weird about Euphoria, seasons 1 and 2, I thought at its best was exploring what is it like for a girl to be sexualized at an incredibly young, like the girl that everyone else is jealous of. Like, you're pretty, your life is going to be easy because you are just so, quote, objectively beautiful. Like, who wouldn't want that? Well, it turns out like that could be like a pretty cursed existence. Who are you? Like, people are objectifying you and sexualizing you from like a young or even preteen age. And the show gets into like what it was like for her to experience like family and friends immediately like making comments about her chest and like how curvy she was getting. It's really disgusting stuff. And like that would do horrible things to a young girl's brain and like image of oneself like as they got older. And I think some of the strongest material use the fact that Sydney Sweeney is sort of a Pamela Anderson sort of type in the modern age of just like your sort of quintessential like big boobed, extremely beautiful blonde woman, and like try to reckon with like what it would be like to be that kind of person. Like, what would that do to you? And I think Sweeney at her best and at that character's best got some decent material to try and explore and grant some sympathy to and some empathy to the idea of a character like that. In the first episode, it really just feels like, isn't she hot, guys? Like, wouldn't it be cool to put her up in a bunch of kink costumes? And it's not clear to me that she's going to be given, just saying, like, trying to find a progressive argument for why OnlyFans should exist, which I actually agree with Cassie on this front. Like, I think it's a little more complicated than just a porn website, but I don't know that we're giving Cassie and by extension Sweeney like material that feels like it's going to be much more than putting her in a bunch of sexy costumes. And it feels like the grossest, most exploitative way to use an actor like Sweeney and her looks.
I think that's probably going to be true, what you just said. I mean, you have actors doing... I think in this episode, you have actors doing fairly degrading things, right? You have I mean, first of all, we should point out this is the second time in 2026 that Jacob Elordi has had a girlfriend who pretends to be a dog, which I'm just going to say is that in
Wuthering Heights? I haven't seen
Wuthering
that
Heights.
yet.
That's
okay.
right. Yeah. So it's like,
wow. Gotta put in the contract.
Like,
you know, this is what I get.
The idea that he's like trying to make his image better by playing a different version of the character. I don't know that fully scans because he just was in Wuthering Heights, but maybe things have changed since he shot both of these things, which was months ago. I don't know. Who knows? But yeah, you have characters like Sydney Sweeney dressing up as a dog, and we've seen videos of future episodes where she does similar things have gone viral online. And Rue needs to swallow these things, and it like looks like a really even if she's pretending, it's like a really painful thing that she's pretending to do.
Oh, those are very that sequence went on for so long.
So you have characters doing these things that like look extremely physically challenging and or potentially humiliating in the context of the show. And that's not necessarily wrong. Like that's not inherently bad that you have that, but you want to handle that with care. You want to do that in a way that justifies the amount of work and the extent to which these characters are going to these actors are going to these lengths in the show. And I just don't really have the confidence that Sam Levinson is going to do any of that. Like it's just kind of my sense of his work so far. Now, I will also say, I think the OnlyFans thing there is a lot of potential to explore. OnlyFans is a phenomenon in American culture, right? OnlyFans is one of the most successful companies in the history of all time. Of all time. Just if you look at the revenue per employee ratio, it generates billions of dollars per year with very, very few people like working at the specific company OnlyFans. And I think a lot of people have like the amount of money that some of these OnlyFans folks are making is mind blowing. I've seen some models online make I think it was Sophie Rain posted that she made $50 million in 1 year, something along those lines, and that's what attracts a lot of people to OnlyFans. It's like, oh, like the amount of money you can make is basically unlimited. All that said, there is a social and psychological cost to being on OnlyFans, and like, so essentially, there's like a rich sector of American society to explore there. Is Euphoria season 3 going to do anything to explore that to any meaningful degree? I don't know. based on the reviews, not really, but it is something where like a lot of people, try to become OnlyFans models. They regret it because it has devastating consequences on their life. Like they don't end up making the money that they thought they would. It ends up having devastating consequences on their lives. Like, it's like there's really interesting drama unfolding on OnlyFans, but is Euphoria the vessel through which you want to tell that story? I'm skeptical. So the show Euphoria season 3, as it has in the past, definitely bringing up some really interesting ideas, and Zendaya doing an amazing job no matter what happens. Is it all going to amount to anything? Who knows? We will be covering the show week to week right here on Decoding TV. Be sure you subscribe at youtube.com/Decoding TV or Decoding TV wherever you get your podcasts. And you can join us as we figure out whether this thing is any good. I suspect a lot of people will be watching this, and even if it is bad, I suspect a lot of people will be watching it. So hopefully you will find some enjoyment out of hearing us figure out how bad it is, if that turns out to be the case. Before we wrap up, though, Patrick Klepek, any other thoughts on the season 3 premiere of Euphoria?
I think it's really interesting that Jules basically does not factor into the season premiere.
Into the season premiere. She will be in subsequent episodes for sure. So, but yes, I mean, it's to your original point of how there's no reason these people would interact with each other, right? Like, why? Lexi doesn't call Fez, and people might be like, "Oh, that's heartless of her." If you met a guy in high school and he went to jail, you might not be lining up to talk to him every other week.
Didn't know that there was their budding romance was one of my favorite Like Lexi is one of my favorite characters in the series, and so I was very like personally invested in like the Lexi Fez romance subplot because it was like, oh wow, this is a real opposites attract situation. Like I see how like I bought it how despite how strange the circumstances were, but it's not as though these were like lifelong friends and her buddy like fell into the drug trade and like not like it was this high school flirtation with an overlap of parties that like she would attend. So
right.
Do I think?
I mean, they did have a lot of phone calls. They did have a lot of phone calls, Patrick. So,
do I think Rue has a point? Like, yes, I think, and then especially Lexi's response being, when they're talking about the family that Rue meets out in the desert, like, well, I wouldn't be friends with a Christian. Like, they're too judgmental.
I'm not going to be friends with a Christian.
Why?
Because they're judgmental.
Which I will say is like one of the best lines in the premiere because Lexi is the most judgmental character in the show, probably. I tend to agree with Lexi's assessments of things. Maybe that says more about me than anything else. But having those words come out of Lexi's mouth was very, very funny. But yeah, there's a lot of in this show people catching up other people on what other people are up to in the way that you commonly do when you catch like, oh, do you remember so-and-so? What are they up to these days? As people have different tangential connections, but how that leads to a compelling story. I don't know. Maybe it'll, if Cassie and, if the wedding happens, I suppose that would be an event that would theoretically bring people together. But if that happens at the end of the season, then what are we doing ahead of that? So I don't know. You and I are going to find out.
The other thing I want to bring up, I guess, is just the idea of God and Christianity, right? It's brought up in the episode. Coleman Domingo's character talks to Rue about it, and Rue brings up the idea of, hey, maybe I should get into religion, and she starts listening to an audiobook of the Bible, which I thought was very funny. And what is this season going to have to say about religion, if anything? The way we see religion deployed in this episode is Rue says, hey, maybe God brought me to Aloe Brown. There is a kind of conceitedness, I think, in some conceptions of American Christianity of like, I am God wanted me to win the Super Bowl. God wanted me to win the Oscar. God wanted this. God wanted me to have this thing. There's this kind of like solipsism, or not solipsism, but like self-centeredness of how people view Christianity. And like, that's what we see in Rue in this episode. Again, will the show have anything interesting to say about it? TBD. But like, it's certainly bringing up all these interesting ideas that honestly, it didn't really in seasons 1 and 2. Like, just, not that seasons 1 and 2 didn't have interesting ideas, but there were different ideas. And so I didn't think this was a bad opening, right? A bad season premiere. It's all about whether it ends up adding up to anything, which we will find out together. Hey everyone, David Chen here. Thank you so much for watching that video from Decoding TV. If you want to get an audio version of the show, all you got to do is go to podcast.decodingtv.com. And if you want to support what we do, get ad-free episodes of the podcast and also bonus episodes of the podcast, go to decodingtv.com and become a paid member. Of course, you can also like and subscribe for more. We appreciate it. Thanks. See you later.